Hey Chemistry, this is part 3 of 2.08. Some ions are monatomic ions, others are polyatomic ions. So let's look at the prefix mono, or in this case they've got rid of the O because the next part starts with a vowel. So mono means how many? One. Poly means many. All the ions you have read about so far are ions that formed when a single atom gains or loses electrons. Examples are beryllium +2, iron +3, and oxygen -2. These are called monatomic ions because they form from one atom. The prefix mono means one. So in other words, it's just that one atom. That's it. Everything we've been talking about so far, monatomic ions. Now, in other cases, several different types of atoms form a unit that acts as a single ion. An example of this kind of ion is permanganate ion, which is manganese bonded to 4 oxygens with an overall -1 charge. There are 5 atoms in this ion, but all 5 act as one ion with a net charge of -1. In other words, they're married. Okay, and now they're going to go find a baby to make a family and combine. So, even though there's 5 atoms, we treat it as one group and it has an overall charge of -1. Another such ion, the hydrogen sulfide ion, is written HSO3. So 1 hydrogen attached to 1 sulfur attached to 3 atoms of oxygen. They're all attached as a family. Together they have a -1 charge. Chemists call these ions polyatomic ions. Poly means many. Here's a table showing some other polyatomic ions. We have acetate, ammonium. Ammonium is one of the only positive polyatomic ions that we'll use. Carbonate, hydroxide we use a lot, OH negative, nitrate, phosphate, and sulfate. And you do not have to memorize these. In fact, I'll be giving you a list of them later when we use them for creating compounds. And in our notes, monatomic ion, any ion of a single atom formed when an electrically neutral atom gains or loses electrons. So example, Ca+2, F-. Polyatomic ion is an ion that consists of 2 or more atoms. That is, a group of 2 or more atoms with an overall electric charge. So these are nonmetals that share electrons, which is called covalently bonded, which we'll get to, but have an overall charge and therefore will bond as a group to another ion. So OH negative is going to bond to, say, calcium. Phosphate, or PO4 -3, is going to bond to, say, aluminum. So it's going to bond as a group. It's a pre-made group. It's an ion. Ions are atoms with a positive or negative charge. Again, we can have cations, which are formed when atoms lose electrons, and therefore there's less electrons than protons, so it's positive. Ions can be anions, formed when atoms gain electrons. The more electrons, the more negative, a negative ion. If an atom gains 1 or more electrons, then it will become a negatively charged ion, or anion, a negative ion. If an atom loses 1 or more electrons, it will then become positively charged because there's more protons than electrons, and it is a cation. Sometimes an individual atom can gain or lose different numbers of electrons and form more than one ion, like the messy middle transition metals with multiple charges. Iron and cobalt are examples of this type of atom. The rest of them, remember, you can tell their charge based on what group they're in, because atoms want a full outer shell to be stable. It is possible for groups of atoms to exist as a single ion. These are the polyatomic ions, such as hydroxide ion, OH. So even though they're preformed, now they're going to act as an ion and go attached to a different ion. All right, so very important lesson. As always, let me know your questions.